Welcome to Decoding Multifamily, where we dive deep into the journeys of industry icons and leaders shaping the multifamily landscape. Join your host, Paul Marks, as he unlocks the stories and insights that will inspire and empower you on your own multifamily journey. Let's discover what makes these leaders tick and how their unique paths can offer a blueprint for your own success. This episode is brought to you by Multifamily Media Network, delivering the latest news, ideas, and inspiration across the multifamily sector. Now, let's jump right into the episode.
Well, welcome to Decoding Multifamily, powered by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm Paul Marks, and we actually have episode 1 of season 2. And I am so excited, and it's my pleasure to have the fabulous Bob Pinnegar, who is the president and CEO of the National Apartment Association, on. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Paul, for having me on.
Yeah, and I've also had the pleasure of having you on the Multifamily Matters radio show a couple of times in the past, and I've got to say that you always bring the receipts with you, and you bring a lot of great information to share with our audience, and we're excited to find out what's going to be happening now that we're in 2025. This is actually being recorded at the end of January of 2025. And why don't we start there and tell us a little bit about, over the last several years, how you've seen the multifamily industry evolve, and what do you think is in store for us in 2025?
Well, if you look back over the last 5 years, it's been quite an interesting ride for the industry, from the pre-COVID period all the way through the period of the pandemic and the lockdowns and everything that occurred, to the incredible surge in demand for housing coming out of that, to returning more of a normalcy in the market. At the same time, we're seeing record deliveries for new product, as well as dramatically increasing expenses. And so it's been a very bumpy ride for the industry at both ends of the extreme for the last 5 years. And we're hoping that 25 will be the transition to more of normalcy as we go into 26, 27, and 28.
As far as like new construction starts, I know that reports that I have seen over the last couple of years, they've been down due to the economy, interest rates, and the cost of building materials and so forth. What do you see there? Do you see that as a trend that would still be occurring?
I think the industry's, or at least on the development side, is adjusting to this new reality, and even on the operations side of interest rates. I mean, we were in a very low environment for interest rates pre-COVID that was unprecedented historically. And what I'm hearing and talking to people is it's moving back to more of what existed pre-2009, before the Great Recession. But that transition is difficult, especially at a time when costs for operating properties have increased over the last year about 8.3%, while nationally rents were only up 3.6. And so the economics of operating assets will really drive new development, in addition to other things like cost of material and labor and the financing for those projects. And so we're at a point in time that there's a lot of different factors that are playing on the market.
Let's talk a little bit about the regulatory environment that's out there right now. Besides the what's going on, I mean, we've got the situation with the RealPage lawsuit that has been in the news quite a bit, as well as a lot of other things with the Bill of Rights for the Renters' Bill of Rights. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing there, and what do you think that holds for operators in the future?
Well, if you step back and look at the last campaign cycle we just went through, housing was a national issue, it was a state issue, it was a local issue. So in nearly every race across the country, there was some impact of housing, whether it be for sale product, first-time home buyers, whether it be the resale market, new development, or rental housing. And so housing is at a level of scrutiny that has never been before. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon, because we fundamentally have a housing problem in this country. So we did see with the shift in administration, we saw a de-emphasis away from the Biden's administration's resident Bill of Rights. But there are still some lasting questions out there, and where will this administration go? What will Congress do from a regulatory standpoint? I think I'm safe in saying that much of the issues around rent control, which was elevated by the former president, are going to go back to being state and local issues. And we're seeing that manifest itself in Washington state right now. And there's a number of states that we're watching their legislatures and working with our affiliates so they're able to provide good information and options other than rent control so we have a more sustainable solution. At the federal level, we're still waiting to see what the directions are. We're still in the opening days of this administration, and it did catch a lot of people by surprise when the FTC unanimously voted to go after Greystar over fees. It's something that surprised a lot of people that was not a party line vote. That was a vote of the entire group, which includes Republicans and Democrats. And given some of the statements by the new commissioner, we're really trying to figure out what is happening at the federal level as we unpack this new administration and the direction they want to go.
Talk a little bit about what you see for affordable housing and the struggles that they're having, and is there a need, or a greater need today to create the private and public partnerships that people are talking about?
Well, I think that the record shows that the tax credit program, these private-public partnerships, have been a great success, but they're a very specialized niche and difficult to manage, and they've been hit especially hard with the increase in expenses. For example, insurance rates. I've had conversations with people in Florida that are operating affordable housing, and they've had, over a period of years, like a 500% and 600% increase in insurance rates. That is, especially when you're operating a tax credit property that has definitely some restrictions on it, that is incredibly challenging. And I got an update from an insurance institute think tank, and they had sent me something that said that that rates for insurance were going to be normalizing and even some rate reductions. That was the week before the fires began in California. And I think that has been something that has brought us back to a point to crisis in insurance and insurance coverage that we don't fully understand right now. So I don't know that we're out of the woods with regards to insurance at this point in time, which impacts tax credit properties and affordable properties more so than it does the rest of the industry because of the limitations they have on rent growth.
One of the big topics that we hear over and over again now in our industry is on technology. I ran into you at an MHC's OpTech late last year, and they always, as well as at Apartmentalize, they're always great new technologies that are rolled out. What do you see as where we are today, and where do you see it going in the future?
Well, it's funny you mentioned at MHC because I'm at their annual meeting right now, which is why I'm talking to you from a hotel room. The rollout of technology is something that has been a challenge for this industry because, if you want to go into tech and be tech forward, you go onto the technology side, and real estate tends to be more about the asset and the environment and the residents that live in the rental housing. But that being said, there have been some great gains that occurred during COVID and coming out of COVID. I think now we're at a point where we're seeing a lot of companies that don't really have a familiarity with the rental housing industry coming in to provide products and services. So from the standpoint of operators, they really need to look at the basics when they're evaluating new products and new services. I think that because we're in a situation right now where the bottom line is being watched because there are so many competing costs that are increasing, they're really looking at, if they're going to be purchasing a new technology, what is going to be the benefit? How is it going to be able to really improve my bottom line or to provide value to the residents so I can either have that competitive advantage in renting or being able to retain people? So those are some of the things I'm seeing right now on the tech side. It'll be interesting as this plays out over the next couple of years. There's a lot of things going on that I'm reading in the newspaper. We all are, about what China's been able to do with this new product that is far less expensive than what we've been pursuing here in the States. So I think this is an evolving area that probably when we talk at Apartmentalize, we could be in a whole different environment than we were sitting here in January of 2025.
Yeah. And I guess, I'm a baby boomer. I'm an old guy. So, technology is a challenge for me. But with these, younger, now the resident age is younger and younger and younger each year as far as the generations. They demand the technology, don't they? And the industry has to respond.
I mean, this is a generation that, unlike the baby boomers and even Gen Z or Gen X, excuse me, they've grown up in this environment, and so their expectations are very different. I think the promise of AI is that it's going to provide a level playing field, so even us baby boomers will be able to navigate the new technologies as they go forward, because a lot of the intent is to take away some of the challenging things of learning operating systems and how they operate. So I think that is something that's interesting and innovative. And also, I should back up and say that it also is from a technology standpoint, you as an operator need to evaluate how you're best positioned to be able to benefit from it. And this is something that has come from conversations that I've had with operators out there. And I see two different camps: those that have really moved towards centralizing operations in their corporate offices wherever they can, to be able to monitor and measure things, to be able to have greater efficiency and potentially implement AI. And then there are those that still have more of a decentralized model. And in that model, it's much more difficult to capture information and data to be positioned to use AI. And that's something I think that's going to evolve over the next couple of years as AI progresses. And you will see companies that are spending money to try to catch up with others that have been out there looking at doing this. And an area that I've seen this in based on, or at least I've heard based on conversations with operators, is that those that have been able to centralize operations have really been able to look at the cost of fraud through the screening process, and has motivated them to look for solutions that are trying to prevent the people that are coming in on the front end that have no intention of paying rent, and then become quite a drag on the properties as you move forward. And so that's just one example, but I'm sure over the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of that happen. And so much like, you have an asset that can be repositioned because you have a Class C property and a Class A location, we could see that on the technology side for many operators.
You mentioned fraud, and that's another big topic that we have a lot of discussions about. It's running rampant, and as technology has developed to help the industry, it's also helped the people who are committing the fraud. So let's talk a little bit about that. What do you see coming down the road for being able to get a handle on all the fraud that's happening?
Well, and that is where it's going to be increasingly challenging. And in a lot of companies, you have one person who is the person who can look at all this stuff and figure it out. And so if there's an application that comes in that's questionable, it's elevated to that person or that group. With the proliferation of websites that can provide documents that are very difficult to try to track, I think that's going to become an increasing issue for the industry. And with the so as that progresses and develops, I think we're going to have to get better and better at our game of evaluating potential applicants. It's going to present a problem because many operators on the larger side, and things happen at the larger operators, and then it migrates down through the industries. They've been looking at trying to speed up the leasing process to make leasing an apartment as easy as possible for our digital natives and the younger generation. That's where we're going to have the challenge: is how do you balance the need to properly vet an application with the speed that is necessary to compete with other companies out there that are moving faster and faster to try to get residents in the door.
You also mentioned centralization, and that's another hot topic that people are talking about a lot. I've actually interviewed some industry leaders of operators said it's a dirty word. They would rather use specialization instead of centralization. Talk a little bit about that. And as I recall, I think it was at an Apartmentalize several years ago. And the first real mention of a specialization seemed like the one who was on the cutting edge, or the company was on the cutting edge, was Avalon Bay in the beginning. Talk a little bit about where you see that, how it's developed and where you see it going.
Well, the idea of specialization is a better word than centralization. I agree with you. Is really goes to the pressure at the site level and the ability for people to operate. And this is something coming out of COVID, where we had some norms in the industry that were acceptable of how many employees you'd have for 100 units. And we were forced to operate outside of that. And a lot of the investors are asking questions like, if you could do it now, why do you want to go back to the previous hiring levels? And this is something that's not new. The pressure to reduce people at the site level to become as efficient as possible has been going on for a very, very long time. And there's operators of all sizes looking at how they can have efficiencies. What works for an Avalon Bay, a UDR, a Greystar is going to be different for a mid-market operator and even for a local or regional operator. And so I think there's a lot of experimentation going on to figure out how things can become more efficient in an effort to try to have the properties perform as good as well as possible.
Can you talk a little bit about, give our audience an idea of the size of the apartment industry in the United States, as far as units and numbers of people and so forth?
Well, if you look at, and I'm maybe a little rusty with my census numbers, but if you look at the industry, it's really divided into two categories. You have 1 to 4 unit rental properties. And so that's a single family home, a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. And then you have communities of 5 units or larger. And so you're looking at the 1 to 4 category, about 22 million rental units in this country. And based on some numbers I saw from RCL Co. probably about 4 years ago, they estimate that 14.9 million of that 22 are single family homes that are being rented by individuals and private operators. And then if you look at the other side of that, about 19 million are in that 5 units or larger category. And so you really, and this is an ongoing conversation with policymakers, because they see our industry as this monolithic, like big oil or big pharmacies, big pharma, and that is we are furthest from the truth in that. Yes, we have companies that are traded on the New York Stock Exchange that have rental units, but also we have many individuals who this is their retirement plan, this is their planning for their family's future to try to create generational wealth. And that diversity is something that we're constantly trying to reinforce with policymakers, to have them understand that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Everything is a little different from one type of property to another, let alone the sizes, let alone where they're located in the country.
I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about you and your background, because that's part of what we do on Decoding Multifamily. We want to decode our guests a little bit and share what their experience is. I know that before you came to NAA, you were in San Diego. Did they have to drag you kicking and screaming across the country to leave that beautiful climate in San Diego?
Nobody said I was smart. But then again, when I look at what's going on from the fires and the environment out there, I'm like, maybe it's not such a bad thing to be on the East Coast.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about your background, how you got into the industry of apartments, and when you made the switch over from San Diego to NAA.
Sure. I graduated from college in the late 80s at a time when it was not a particularly good time economically. So I ended up getting involved in some political jobs. And so I worked for a member of Congress, worked on some political campaigns, worked for a city council member. And it was an interesting path that led me to this industry, because from that, I saw a lot of different aspects of how policy is made and how public opinion drives policy. And then I ended up taking a position with the then San Diego County Apartment Association as their lobbyist. And so it was an interesting time of having one foot in the political world and one foot in an industry. And it was also at a time where we were coming out of an economic crisis. And it was an opportunity really to understand and learn how an industry works, how an industry operates. We had a program where we used to have breakfast meetings with city council members and mayors from around the region. And so we always had a constituent that was there. We had a real estate broker. We had a couple of operators. We were lucky enough to have an economist in the area. And so we were able to talk about everything from the operations of the property in the community in which the person, the selected official represented, to the economics of it. And so it wasn't to lobby, it was to create lasting relationships. And that's where I learned a lot of foundational information about the industry. From there, I ended up eventually running the association in San Diego. And then I think we're going on 14 years ago now. My predecessor in this position approached me at a conference that we were at and said he wanted me to become his COO, to which I almost said no right away because of the weather and all those other things. But the more I thought about it, it was the opportunity to do things that I would not be able to do if I stayed in the position I was in. And so that gave me the opportunity to come to NAA and really understand the patchwork or the quilt of this industry and how different it is from region to region, from a garden style to a mid-rise to a high-rise to a single-family home or a duplex. And so I think that gave me the information to be more well-rounded. So when the opportunity opened up for this position, hopefully I was a good candidate, at least I guess the people who were on the committee that made the decision. But it's been an interesting time since I've gotten here, because we had an organization that had been around for over 75 years, and it was really a process of how do we operate and what do we do. Each business unit had its own creation, fulfillment, customer service, so we centralized all of that, which I think positioned us in many ways to be successful as COVID hit, and we were able to make changes and tact and move quickly. Coming out of that, as housing has become a more important issue over the last 5 years, we've actually then shifted the focus of the organization to be more advocacy related, at the federal level, but also to reinforce what we're able to do at the state and local level with our affiliate network. And so, as an old-fashioned federation trade association, we're big and we can be a little clumsy and we move slowly, but once you get that focus moving forward in a positive direction, there's incredible things you can do, because we touch real people every day through the efforts and work we do, and we're able to bring those stories to policymakers.
So 16 years on the national scene, talk about some of the things that you've seen because you've really seen a very cyclical time there with the economy and the ups and downs of the industry. Talk a little bit about what you see as some of the low points and the high points and some of the achievements that have been made in the industry in that tenure.
Well, I mean, from the standpoint of, in general, as we've gone through the various economic cycles, and remember 2017, 2018, everybody was scared there was going to be a downturn, and just the mere mention of a recession is something that would send fear through the industry because it had been so long. I think that we had been on a continuous upswing for a number of years, and I think the last 3 or 4 years have really given us reshuffled the cards for us to a certain degree, and we're adjusting and adapting. I think that the industry is doing a very good job of adjusting and adapting. When you look at other forms of commercial real estate, whether it is commercial office, retail, go through all of them, we've actually performed very well as an industry, which ensures that we continue to have capital flowing in to the industry, which which is people's 401ks, pension funds, retirement accounts. Those are the people that are invested in rental housing across the country. I think that we're positioned better to come out of this than other assets and other classes. There's always been a talk about industrial as being a better investment group than multifamily, but it's a very small niche market, and they're not talking about that anymore because I think that the opportunities there have been exhausted, at least for a period of time. And as you look to future uses for office, there's a lot of conversations about conversion from office to residential. When you look at a lot of the retail centers, the strip centers, whole conversations about destination making through multifamily housing. And so I think multifamily is here to stay from the standpoint of creation of new product and to being part of all kinds of plans for different housing types across the country as we create communities that are infill as well as what this new generation of Gen Z want, which is more urban suburban. I think multifamily is going to be a key part of all of that.
I've always thought that every cloud has a silver lining, and we went through an unprecedented crisis with the pandemic that not only hurt the multifamily industry, but all industries. What are some of the silver linings you think that multifamily got out of that? I think there are a few.
Right, and it hurt. It also hurt the general population as well.
Right.
And there was some policies that were created that were not forward looking, as created and saddled some people with some debt that they wouldn't have ordinarily been saddled with. I think from the standpoint of this industry is it has shaken up a status quo view of the world, because if you think about before the pandemic, when you talked about change, there were people that went, "Oh, it's been really good for a long time, and I really don't see the need for change."
Yeah.
I think that going through the pandemic, it forced everybody to think differently. I've some members I've talked to that said they bulked up on staffing and they went as high touch, personal touch as they could. And I have others that have used technology to be as efficient as possible. I think as this shakes out, the technology to be efficient as possible is probably going to be the winning hand over the long term. But we can't forget that this is a people business and we continue to connect with people on a daily basis. I think it gave a lot of opportunities for people that may not ordinarily have gotten those opportunities to shine, and gave them that opportunity to shine. And as a result, I think is really excelling their careers to move up to areas that they might have had to wait longer to move into. And so I think there's a lot of positive things that came out of it. And I think that there's more positive things that will show themselves in the future as a result of the adversity we went through.
Do you think that the industry as a whole adopted some of the technology a little bit more rapidly because of the pandemic, where they were maybe just taking a look at it and dipping their toe in the water?
Definitely. It was the need to adapt your entire portfolio quickly versus, well, we'll try it at this property and wait a couple of years and see if it makes sense. There was, for those that were owner operators, I think they saw the need right away and they knew they had to adapt. And the suppliers in our industry made changes quickly to ensure that it would happen and be as flawless as possible. So there's great stories on both sides. And I think the old challenge, if you're on the fee management side, in pitching new technologies, things that have new cost to your clients, your credibility is always on the line. And I think that slows down the process and environment for change. But they didn't have that opportunity. And so you had to rip the Band-Aid off all at once and make the changes and move forward, which I think for many operators, they created a higher level of trust between their clients and themselves that I think are continuing to assist them as they go through some of the challenges we have today with increasing expenses.
Have you, in your career, had any mentors?
That's an interesting question. I knew you were going to start throwing some of these questions that weren't related to the industry. I think I have in people in the industry. And there was a broker in San Diego who also had a degree in economics. And so there was a number of conversations I've had with him over the years. And he really helped me to understand the business side of how things operated and look at trends in various municipalities and how that was going to impact the industry and the economy over the longer haul for that particular area. And so it's those conversations with people, some of which are local operators and some of which are national operators. I don't think there's any one source of truth out there. I think that the more people you can talk to, the more information you can gather, the better informed you can be, or at least in my position, I can be, to help the industry navigate the knowns and the unknowns that are out there in front of us.
One of the great things about the multifamily industry is there's really no barrier of entry. You can come in at all different kinds of levels and grow within the industry. You don't necessarily have to have a college degree to be able to do that. Talk a little bit about some advice you would give to people who are starting in the industry or been in here for a while as far as what they can do to advance their careers.
But this is an industry that very few people woke up one day and said, I want to get involved in the rental housing industry, and this is going to be my career and my life. So I think it's really for those people that have come to the industry to look at it not just as a transitional step in your resume to whatever you ultimately want to accomplish. As you said, this is not an industry that requires college graduates or PhDs. This is an industry that is very people-centric, that looks at the assets and how they can perform as efficiently as possible to be effective. And so from the standpoint of having a job where you can get in and make a difference, whether it be at the property level, for the various metrics you use, or the people that are your residents, whether it is at the regional level where you're looking at portfolios of properties and trying to find those that are not performing as well as others, and how do we help and fix them, the problem-solving aspects, all the way, to the C-suite of many of these companies that are making decisions about where they invest and where they go and exposing their risk and how do they make sure that they're not overly exposed in any one part of the country. I mean, there's a lot of different skill sets that you can grow into and evolve over time. And there's a lot of industry education that's out there to assist you, whether it is our educational programming, whether it is IREM, whether it's other resources out there. There's a wealth of information that you can access without having to go to a four-year college and get the debt that comes along with that.
As we draw the podcast to a close, talk a little bit about some of the things that NAA is working on now, some of the upcoming events, and if people want to get involved, how can they do that?
We're definitely getting ready for Advocate, which is going to be in mid-March, and so I would encourage anybody who is thinking about coming to Washington, D.C. to assist us with the lobby day to come and have those meetings and have those conversations, because the local affiliates organize the meetings, and there is nothing more effective than having a constituent come from wherever you are in the country into those congressional offices and have conversations with the elected official or with the policy people that advise the member of Congress. Those are opportunities to make relationships. You don't just go in one time and have a meeting and say, I'm done. These are conversations that occur over a period of years as you build credibility and you're able to become a more effective advocate for the industry. In fact, we're offering our advocate training programs where for individuals who want to get involved, we are training people and positioning them so they can be effective. It would be my personal goal that for every member of Congress, there is somebody in this industry that is connected with the association that can walk into that room with the member of Congress, and they're on a first name basis, and they can actually have conversations about what the real impacts of policy decisions are. Because with that kind of familiarity, that kind of ability to provide information, we will be much better prepared as an industry moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great goal to have.
And of course, Apartmentalize in June is always a great opportunity to come to the industry's marketplace, where you have people selling products and services, and you can understand what is the latest and greatest. We have education that is going on through the entire conference. It is a very long week for us as staff because there's a lot of people there and there's a lot of things to do, but it's one of the most rewarding times of the year for us from the standpoint of working with our members to try to get everybody together, create a sense of community, and they all go home with ideas they can use to operate their properties more efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, Apartmentalize is one of my favorite conferences to go to. It's always great, and the job that the team does, the NAA team does, is fantastic, and putting that on, it's a mammoth undertaking, I'm sure. And I know this is not your last trip to Las Vegas, where you are right now. You're going to be there at least once more.
I will be here with 12,000 of my closest friends.
And that'd be great. So if someone wants to reach out to NAA, how's the best way for them to do that?
The best way is to go to our website, naahq.org. And on that website, you can tap into what we're doing, what's happening. If you're interested in getting policy updates, we have a monthly webinar that we do, and you can go to the government affairs section and sign up for that. And so then, therefore, you can come in and you hear from our lobbyists, you hear from our attorneys on what's happening, not just at the national level, but around the country, because we bring our affiliates in to do spotlights on what they're facing and what they're doing. I would also encourage anybody who wants to get involved to contact your local affiliate, and that information is available on our website. If you go to the join section, you put in your zip code and it will tell you where your affiliate is and how to get in touch with them, because the more you're involved with the association, the more you're going to be able to network with others that are your peers, and the more knowledge you're going to have to make sure you're operating effectively. And when you have that thing you come across that you're scratching your head going, how do I deal with this? If you've been involved with the local association, the state or the national associations, you typically have a network of people you can call and say, hey, how did you deal with this when this arose? And you're going to be able to avoid making mistakes that others have.
All right. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being on Decoding Multifamily. I'd love to have you back again on an annual basis as we talk about each new year, but it's been great. As I said before, you always bring the receipts.
Okay. Well, I'm happy that I can help out in any way I can, and I really appreciate the work you're doing to bring information to the industry.
Well, thank you so much. I do want to remind our audience that Decoding Multifamily is brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, where we have 20 industry icons who have their own podcasts, and they're practicing industry icons. You can learn a lot, learn about trends in the industry. Go to multifamilymedianetwork.com. Sign up to find more about the upcoming podcast. Thanks again, Bob. I appreciate having you on. Have a great trip out there in Las Vegas.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Decoding Multifamily. We hope today's conversation left you with actionable insights and a dose of inspiration. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your network. And remember, this podcast is proudly brought to you by Multifamily Media Network, your trusted source for stories, trends, and insights in multifamily living. Stay tuned for more stories and insights from the leaders redefining multifamily. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep decoding multifamily.